Jets training camp is underway. They just had their second practice, which was open to the public. Xavier Gibson expected to be sidelined for a week or two. Malik Taylor has shown flashes. Coach Saleh said Corley has a, quote, long way to go. What does this mean for the Jets wide receiver room heading into 2024? It's a Saturday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk, and we are live.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Samini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer, and Jets legend, Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Welcome in, everyone. It is a Saturday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Here to talk some Jets training camp, I bring on my co-host, Brandyn Pokrass of Jet X Factor. Brandyn, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Another fun practice in the books. And yeah, very excited to talk about what transpired today.
Yeah, so today was the second. Far for the Jets throughout training camp, and it looks like you cannot hear me. Is that true?
Yeah, not sure what happened there. You kind of cut out.
You got me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so like I was saying, a lot of interesting nuggets.
Yeah, you cut out again.
How about now?
Yes, now I can hear you. Let's try it a third time.
Okay. So yes, a lot of interesting nuggets so far for the New York Jets throughout training camp. You know, a lot of fans. Those tickets sold out fast. Fans have been loving the camp, everything so far. But before we get into it, I just wanted to touch on one thing. The main headline really for the New York Jets heading into training camp was this man right here, Hassan Reddick. And there was a tweet put out earlier today by Josina Anderson stating that the Reddick talks are, moving in a positive manner. And I really like to hear that. What do you think gets done with Reddick, and when do you think we see him on the field?
I think you're going to see him on the field sooner rather than later, because this situation where both sides need each other, where the Jets need Reddick because he takes that defensive line from a good unit to a possibly great unit. And Reddick, on the other hand, in order for him to get the extension and money that he wants, he needs to play for the Jets. He needs to be able to have a really, really good season. I think that you're going to see this deal done sooner rather than later. I think you'll probably see a restructure that guarantees his money this year and maybe adds on a possible option year. But you're going to see something that kind of threads the needle for both sides. And it's important for Reddick to get in. You know, padded practices start next week. The first preseason game is quickly approaching. You need to have your full defensive unit ready to mesh together and start moving towards, the goal of this season, which is to end the playoff drought, to compete in the AFC, to try to make a Super Bowl run. That's why you acquire Hassan Reddick. That's why you let Bryce Huff walk and try to get the more established veteran. You want that production now. And because both sides know how important this situation is, they're not going to let it drag on, because letting it drag on does two things. Number one, it puts Reddick behind the 8 ball and makes him possibly not be ready to have the productive season that he needs. And number two, it creates a distraction for a team that, let's face it, has had plenty of distractions in years past. To put it lightly, they don't need that. They need to be focused on winning games and making it far in the postseason. And you don't do that with letting a situation like this linger.
I absolutely agree. And, with this Reddick holdout progressing, we've seen a lot about, former first round pick. The Jets picked him up, had a mini camp tryout with him. They liked him. They kind of extended his tryout now to camp, and that is none other than Tuck McKinley, who's looked great. I think it's he's played great, especially in terms of recording sacks. I know it's training camp, still pads, but I mean they've been sack counting McKinley so far. You think he makes the 53 man, and what does his role look like?
I think he has a good shot.
Okay.
Obviously he's he's making an impact now with the reps that he's had. As you see him probably work up the depth chart and go against some of the starting caliber offensive linemen, I think he does have a good shot because he has the talent. He was a highly regarded draft pick in years past. It's just a matter of him finding that burst again and finding that explosiveness and his ability to get after the passer. But I think there's a shot that he does stick because this is a team that does need a few defensive line spots filled. They did lose Bryce Huff. They lost Quentin Jefferson. They lost John Franklin Myers. They need guys to step up. And even stepping beyond McKinley, whether it's Brandon McGregor or Eric Watts or possibly Leonard Taylor when he gets back on the field, Javon Kinlaw, Lecky Fotu. The Jets' strength has been developing guys on the interior, on the edge of this defensive line. So it would make a ton of sense based off the track record if McKinley all of a sudden is back to his form that made him a high draft pick, if they get the most out of these UDFA players. So to your original question, I do think he has a really good shot to make the roster, especially if he keeps producing like this, because that just adds another weapon next to Quinnen Williams, next to Jermaine Johnson, next to Will McDonald, next to Hassan Reddick. If you have another guy that, for whatever reason, other teams couldn't get the most out of, and all of a sudden this defensive coaching staff can get that out of him, that's an asset you would like to keep on a roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Former first round pick, definitely has not lived up to expectations so far in the league. And, speaking of that kind of next man up mentality, we're going to look over to the wide receiver room. Xavier Gipson limped off the field on Friday's practice to what appeared to be a leg injury. Coach Sala, when he addressed the media following Friday's practice, he later said he expects Gipson to be sidelined for a week or two. With that being said, that prompted guys like Malik Taylor and Malachi Corey to kind of receive more snaps. And the majority of the first team snaps have been going to Taylor, and he's impressed, whether it was that 50-yard touchdown reception from Tyrod Taylor leaping over Quantez Stigger's head, who's, by the way, looked great throughout OTAs, minicamp, training camp, all the workouts so far. What do you think this injury means for a guy like Taylor? And if he continues to step up and thrive with the first teams, do you think, he has a shot of making the 53, or is it a long shot? And then also, as for Malachi Corley, what does this mean for him? Do you think it's really going to hurt his role if he's not receiving these reps? Coach Sala said he thinks Corley has a, quote, long way to go in order for him to be, a centerpiece of this Jets offense.
Very, very deep question, but I think the best way to look at it is just in the overall sense of the wide receiver room. You have your top two guys. You have your Garrett Wilson. You have Mike Williams whenever he gets back on the field. And then from there, it gets really interesting because Xavier Gipson is thought to be in that role, but injuries create opportunities. Obviously, want Xavier Gipson to get back on the field, but now you're seeing a guy like Malik Taylor making contested grabs and showing off some good route running and getting open. You have Jason Brownlee making some good plays today. He made a leaping catch over a cornerback. You have a guy like Tyler Harrell, UDFA from Miami. Looks fast, looks quick with his route running. You have Alan Lazard, which I know the stigma around Lazard, but he's made plays with Rodgers. He's looked pretty good outside of the occasional drop or two. So I think the biggest thing that comes out of this Gipson injury is that you need to pay attention to this wide receiver depth. And that's not even bringing up a guy like Lance McCutcheon. There are guys that are interesting players. Not going to go as far to say that, they'll be immediate contributors for the Jets, but you have guys that could be, possible contributors if a Garrett Wilson goes down for a week. if a Mike Williams goes down for a week. You have guys that have talent and could capitalize on it. It's just a matter of how do they look in padded practices, how do they look in joint practices, and how do they look in the preseason. It's very hard to gauge, who's being kept, who's not being kept without seeing those type of things occur. Because we could sit here right now and say, okay, the top two are solidified. Gibson's probably making the roster, and then it's probably Lazard and Brownlee. Mm-hmm. For example, if Tyler Harrell has an insane preseason and shows off speed that this offense would love to keep, maybe he's sticking on the roster over a Jason Brownlee if he struggles. If Brownlee has this incredible preseason, maybe he leaps Gibson on the depth chart. Yeah. If Malik Taylor continues to show what he has so far, maybe he leaps a specific wide receiver on the depth chart. It's a game of musical chairs. It's like a Jenga board, you're stacking blocks, because it's not just wideouts versus wideouts. It's, okay, how many wideouts are we keeping compared to offensive linemen, compared to defensive linemen, compared to cornerbacks, safeties? It all comes together, and it's all about the team building philosophy. I think that Malik Taylor has a great shot because he has a rapport with Rodgers before. Rodgers has spoken highly of him, but he's also spoken highly of Gibson. He's spoken highly of Brownlee. So it all comes down to what they do on the field. And extending beyond Gibson's just wide receiver potential, you have a guy in Tariq Cohen that keeps showing things. What if they like him better as a returner? Gibson then has to show that much more at receiver. It all comes together eventually. But right now, we have a bunch of scattered pieces that we don't know how they fit together yet. And once one piece comes together, the second piece becomes easier to find. So I agree with you in the sense of I think Taylor has a good shot, but I'm not going to make any, prediction or stamp of approval that he is or isn't going to make the roster. Because quite frankly, guys have had great training camps at the beginning. Then once you hit those joint practices, it's, oh, this guy disappeared. Oh, this guy looks really bad against another team. It's a very long off season. It's about build up. It's about, having consistent performance week after week, day after day. And I think that's going to be the big key for this position as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned consistent performance there. That's something that Israel Abandokonda has not shown throughout spring workouts and the reps he had last year. Just from, I haven't been at a practice yet. I will be credentialed as media, though, for Tuesday's practice. What I'm seeing on Twitter, though, it's looking like, obviously Allen and Brees are getting the majority of the first team snaps, because I think those are pretty clear to say those are going to be the top two guys. And then after that, you have Isaiah Davis, you have Tariq Cohen, and you have Israel Abandokonda. I think they're going to keep two of those guys, cut one. I've been saying since the day the Jets signed Cohen that I don't think Izzy will make the 53-man. I know you said you don't want to jump to any conclusions right away, but, would you say right now that you think Cohen is currently ahead of Abandokonda on the Jets depth chart?
I would definitely say that.
Okay.
Yes. I definitely agree with you there because, Braylon Allen, and this goes back to the point we talked about consistency throughout the summer. He is continuing what he did from OTAs in the training camp. He looks smooth as a runner. His route running looked really damn good for someone his size. And the Jets are taking notice in that because based off reps, and doesn't always stack up. Sometimes he'll be with Rodgers, sometimes he'll be with Taylor. But in terms of reps, he's getting the second most reps out of the running backs. Then you look at Isaiah Davis. He's looked shifty. He's looked good. And he's even worked in a decent amount with Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor. Tariq Cohen, going back to Thursday, he had this play where looked like the run was dead. He puts his foot in the ground and all of a sudden cuts it back. It's one of those types of plays that primed Tariq Cohen when he was healthy and didn't have the injury history. That's the type of play he made. That's what made him a valuable asset for the Chicago Bears. The fact that he's showing that again, it essentially means that Izzy has that much harder of a road. Because you have to leap a guy that, when he's been healthy, has been one of the most shifty and explosive just receiving backs in the game. And if he's even getting back to 80% of that, that's a valuable asset for a team. You have to leap a guy in Isaiah Davis who has special teams potential on top of playing running back. And he's probably not leaping Braylon Allen at this point.
Yeah.
But even behind him, Xavier Valade has shown a few things during practice. So it's one of those things where Izzy didn't help himself in any regard during OTAs. I said it before. He looked indecisive. He didn't look as sure of himself still, reading the holes and with catching the ball. It looked like he was thinking a lot. And he's looked better. The explosiveness is still there. He looks like he's hitting the holes a bit better. But he's still not at that level of Allen, Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis, and even Tariq Cohen. And like I said before, the reality is every position, it's not in a vacuum. Sometimes you're going up against other spots on the roster. Jets aren't keeping 5 running backs. So unless Izzy has this phenomenal offseason where he looks miles better than the majority of the running backs on the depth chart, I just don't see an avenue for him right now to be any higher than RB4 or even RB5.
Everyone smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed if you're just tuning in alongside Brandyn Pokrass. I am your host, Connor Long, here to talk some New York Jets training camp football. But staying on the offensive side, moving over to the quarterback room, Andrew Peasley is one who is, I saw a tweet, I believe, from Robbie Sabo was today. He looked okay today, but 3 interceptions, I think, in the last 2 practices or something crazy like that. So he definitely has not looked great. Undrafted free agent, the Jets signed. And, it sure doesn't help that, Jordan Travis, the Jets said they're going to take their time with him. So the question becomes, will he ready to be QB3 for week 1? And the Jets kind of got ahead of that. They signed quarterback Ben Bryant yesterday or 2 days ago, and that did not last for long as he was cut today, and the Jets signed multi-UFL champion Steven Martinez to a contract. What do you think that QB3 spot looks like going into week 1? Do you see Travis ready? If not, do you think it's a combination of Peasley and Martinez kind of battling it out for reps?
I think the thing the Jets should do with Jordan Travis is play it as safe as possible, right? You don't need to rush him back. There's no need to rush him back. So I think in that sense, if he's ready for the preseason at some point, you put him out there and see what he has and try to get him ready for some preseason action. Otherwise, if the Jets are getting to their QB3, a lot of things went wrong this season, right? If Andrew Peasley or Martinez or Jordan Travis are getting regular season snaps, a lot of things went wrong for the Jets this season. So I think the best option is let Peasley and Martinez soak up those reps, let them play as much as possible. See if you even have a diamond in the rough in either of those guys. And once Jordan Travis is ready, evaluate Travis versus the other guy. And likely you're keeping Travis over either Martinez or Peasley, but it's one of those positions where it's like quarterback 3 doesn't matter until it matters, because quarterback depth is so hard to have from 1 to 2 that when you get to 3, you just need someone that is an absolute disaster. So I'm not really putting too much thought into it right now. I'm just interested to see, can Peasley or Martinez show that they're a serviceable backup level, that they could come in and not be a complete disaster. That's what I'm looking for from them. And I think when Jordan Travis gets back, you're looking for that exact same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of kind of, average level, got battle it out for that. Jamie and Sherwood is someone who's looked good, during spring workouts, summer workouts, everything. And he's kind of been with the Jets for a little while now. You've seen some snaps from him here and there, but has really struggled to kind of bridge that gap in terms of consistency, in terms of, quality of play and snap counts. He seemed to look great during practice. What do you think that next step is for him in terms of, really receiving regular season snaps from the Jet for at linebacker?
I mean, I don't think the Jets need him to be anything more than LB3 right now.
Yes.
You still have Mosley. You still have Quincy Williams, who became one of the best linebackers in football last season. I think the important thing that you want to see out of him, though, is what you're seeing right now. He looks faster attacking downhill. He looks faster in coverage. He had a pass breakup today by deflecting an Aaron Rodgers pass. He had a really nice run fit. You want to see those steps from year 2 to year 3. And what did he take a step forward in? And I think that the track record of the Jets with the linebacker position, how they turned Quincy Williams into a really good one, that should make you excited about what Sherwood could be. The fact that he's flashing already in training camp. Because if you have something in your linebacker 3 where you can now use him as a rotational piece and not feel worried about him, and, in the case of an injury, be able to be like, oh, CJ Mosley has to miss a week. We're not missing a step with Quincy and Sherwood now. So I think it's really good to see that he's possibly taking that step forward, because more depth is a great thing. Just because, he's not on the field doesn't mean that, it's not good or the progress doesn't mean anything. It just means your defense is that much deeper now.
Absolutely. Yeah, mentioned kind of defense there a lot. Defense was winning the majority of the battles today. I think you might have noted it in your post-practice thoughts in what you posted on X, formerly known as Twitter. I don't know. I still say Twitter, tweet 99.9% of the time. But you did note that in your post-practice thoughts. Do you think we should be a little concerned about the offensive line in terms of the way they've been holding up? I know you mentioned Olu's look great, and you said, playing behind Tyron Smith for a year will do wonders for Fashanu. So do you think we should be concerned about this offensive line so far?
I don't think so, because they've been pretty good the majority of camp. The thing that I would say to people where it's like, oh, should we be worried about the defense when the offense does good? Or should we be worried about the offense when the defense does good? With the type of roster that the Jets have, you want to have balance. You want to have a day where Aaron Rodgers doesn't have an incompletion and just lit up the secondary. And then you want to have a day where, hey, the defense struck back and they had 4 sacks and the secondary was locked down. That's the mark of a good roster. That's the mark of a team that can make a playoff run. Sometimes, as we've seen, when the defense dominates every single day and the offensive line's getting blown back every single day, that doesn't necessarily mean that the defense is going to be best in the league. That might mean that your offense is in trouble. Vice versa. If your offense is driving down and scoring every single day and having no resistance, that might mean your defense is in trouble. I know the term has been used to death, but iron sharpens iron is truly what is necessary here. It's truly what you want to see in this scenario, because by working against a top-tier offense, your defense becomes that much better. By working against a top-tier defense, your offense becomes that much better. Jermaine Johnson is going to be that much better by facing Tyron Smith every day in practice. Aaron Rodgers is going to be that much better by facing DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner and Michael Carter the second every day in practice. Your linebackers and your safeties are going to be that much better dealing with a quarterback that can see everything, whereas your running backs and receivers are going to be that much better seeing the lanes open and close the way they do with that type of defense and seeing the different type of coverages the secondary throws at you. Basically, overall, it's a good thing. Jets fans should be happy that the defense won today, because it means that you don't need to be concerned about the overall status of the unit and that they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, and it was Coach Saleh kind of spoke a little bit about it when he addressed the media today. He expects AVT and Morgan Moses to kind of be practicing in full in the next week or two. And with that being said, with those two guys out, that opens the door for, other guys like, for example, Jake Hansen at guard is someone who the Jets re-signed, who looked, I thought, very, very solid at the end of last season. Who's your dark horse, if you will, on this Jets offensive line? A name that kind of no one's been really talking about, but you think they have a shot to really climb the rankings during preseason?
I think it's going to be interesting because backup offensive linemen, how do you get the best gauge on them, right? Because you're facing backup defensive players a lot of the time. You're not facing the upper echelon. I think I'd keep an eye on Max Mitchell because it seems like he's fully back to health. What does it look like him finally having a healthy offseason where, he's able to get his feet underneath him? How does Carter Warren look? Jets seem to be very high on him. How does he look as depth? And then on the interior, as I pull up the depth chart, I think that looking at Cole Lavallo, I think is
yes,
he's
the Jets,
the one from the UFL.
Yes, the Jets signed him, and it's really
Yes.
interesting to note that he has experience playing all 5 positions on the line, so you can kind of move him around. I mean, I think that's what the Jets are looking for. I mean, give me the versatility.
Yeah, he's a guy I'm keeping an eye on because he, like you said, has the versatility, played in the UFL. He could be a sleeper as a depth option. But I think overall, the good thing about the Jets offensive line, even if they're not the most talented backups and the talented depth, a lot of these guys have experience because of how decimated their offensive line was last year. You now have a unit that, like, for example, Xavier Newman, he has experience starting. So if you even get to him on the depth chart, now he has experience seeing different types of defenses. So I'm keeping an eye on the tackles. I'm keeping an eye on the UFL guy. But I'm interested to see if anybody just blows the Jets away. Because I'm not personally expecting any offensive lineman to just rocket ship up the depth chart. But I'm interested to see who's able to hold their own.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something interesting to note. But Brandyn, I really appreciate you joining me. Before you share your final thoughts, 4 dinner guests, anyone in the world, dead or alive, who are you taking?
4 dinner guests.
Yes, anyone, dead or alive, anyone who's ever stepped foot on Earth.
Man, you're just dropping this on me now. Okay. I think number 1 for me is Ken Griffey Jr., my favorite athlete ever. The whole reason I wore 24 playing baseball and wore 30, and yeah, he's my favorite athlete ever. LeBron James is number 2. I think number 3 for me would be Will Smith.
Ooh.
And number 4, ooh. God, this is a tough. Nailing it down to 4 is tough. Number 4 would probably be LaDainian Tomlinson.
During you said I was dropping it on you, I just would like to let you know that is I started my last interview with Jeremy Fowler. That is the new signature question that ends every single interview. But Brandyn, really appreciate you joining me. Now, time for your final thoughts. Yeah,
so really, really good day of practice. I really like what I'm seeing from both sides of the football. The Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson connection looks phenomenal. Like, they're getting to that point where it's a mind meld. They're able to just attack any coverage, be any sort of thing that's in front of them. The fact that you're seeing that on July 27th, really good for what it can look like by week 1 of the season. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from the overall offensive side of the ball, whether it be a Malik Taylor, whether it be a Braylon Allen, whether it be a Tariq Cohen. You want to see those types of guys pop because that means not only are your starters in a good spot, but your depth options also are. Then on the defensive side of the ball, the coverage for the most part, really good. Forced a lot of short completions today. Defensive line getting a really good push compared to previous practices. And I think just overall for me, I want to keep seeing that balance. I want to see the offense win a few days. I want to see the defense win a few days. And I just want to see every aspect of the team progress due to the competition that each side of the ball provides. But look, we're still early on in camp. So much more football left. So much more developments to occur. And I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
Absolutely. Brandyn, I really appreciate you joining me. Everyone, thank you guys for watching. And as always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.